Purnamidam Purnamidam Purnat Purnamadachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Oh, that Brahman is infinite. This phenomenal world is also infinite. But this is only a projection of that. If this is taken away, that remains infinite as before. Well, peace to the individuals, peace to the planets, and peace to the animals. So we'll read the verses we've covered already. We've done to the first 14 verses, I think. So in this changing world, everything is subject to change. Yet everything is covered with the Lord. Practice renunciation and be strong in the consciousness of the self. Do not run after anyone's wealth. A man may wish to live for 100 years, performing his duties as prescribed by the scriptures. Well, man, if you do your duties in this way, then the results of whatever you do will not come to you. There is no other way. There are worlds known to be sunless and fit for demons. They are enveloped in darkness, such as what the blind, in other words, those devoid of self-knowledge, experience. Those people who have neglected the attainment of self-knowledge and have thus committed suicide, as it were, are doomed to enter those worlds after death. Brahman is one without a second. It never moves, yet it goes faster than the mind. It is always ahead. The sense organs can never catch up with it. It is still, yet it defeats all in a race. By its power, the Lord, who dwells in space, upholds water and everything else in the phenomenal universe. That Brahman moves and it does not move. It is far off and it is also nearby. That Brahman is inside of this and is also its outside. He who sees everything in himself and himself in everything never hates anything. When a person knows that he himself has become everything, and he knows the oneness of things, how can he hate or love anything? He, the Self, is all-pervasive, radiant, without a form, without any defect, immaculate, untainted, all-knowing, the master of his own mind, the best of all, of independent origin and eternal. He dispenses to each his due. Those who mechanically perform sacrifices, avidya, go into a darkness that is like being blind. But those who merely worship gods and goddesses, avidya, go into a deeper darkness. Scholars say that the path of avidya, performing agnihotra and other sacrifices, and the path of vidya, worshipping gods and goddesses, produce different results. Wise men confirm this. He who worships gods and goddesses, vidya, and also performs sacrifices, avidya, attains immortality by sacrifices, avidya, and attains bliss by worshipping gods and goddesses, vidya. Those who worship the unmanifested, the causal state of the world, go into a darkness that is like being blind. But those who worship the manifested, the world we see around us, go into a deeper darkness. Scholars say that the worship of Sambhuti, Hiranyagarbha, and Asambhuti, Prakriti, produce different results. Wise men confirm this. He who worships the unmanifested, Asambhuti, Bhuti, and also the manifested, Sambhuti, attains immortality by the unmanifested, Asambhuti, and conquers death by the manifested, Sambhuti. So this brings us, this is what we covered before, and it brings us up to verse 15. Hiranyayena Katrina Satya yapititam mukham. Tattvam pusana parvanu satya dharmaya drishtaye. So the face of truth is hidden by a shiny disk. O Sun, the sustainer of life and everything in this world, please remove the disk so that I, the seeker of truth, may see it. So the Sun is personified here. He sustains everything. He is the source of life, the source of everything. He himself is bright, and he also makes everything else bright. His brightness is such that it dazzles our eyes. The Upanishad says there's truth behind the sun, and this truth is no other than Brahman. All of us are seeking the truth, seeking Brahman, but we cannot see it because of the dazzling light of the sun. It is as if a bright golden disk is covering the truth. We pray to the sun that he may be pleased to remove the disk, so that we may see the face of Brahman. That is, that we may see the truth. So all sense objects are thus covered as if they have a golden disk over them. And that is why we feel drawn towards them. These objects are not real, but they appear to be real, as a rope appears to be a snake in a dark place. So when a light is brought, we see the rope as it is. Similarly, we need light to see the reality. We need knowledge so that we can distinguish the real from the unreal. The world as we see it is not real. It is not real in the sense that it is constantly changing and is transitory. That which is real never changes. It is always the same, and it is imperishable. Brahman alone is real, and the self, which is the self of all, is that Brahman. So out of ignorance, we take transitory things to be permanent and cling to them. Sooner or later, however, those things perish, and then we lament. We make this mistake because these things look so attractive. They appear to be covered with gold, but it is not real gold. Thus, the Upanishad has this earnest prayer that truth may reveal itself to us so that we may not be misled by worthless, ephemeral things. The sun is light, and light is knowledge. Knowledge is truth, and truth is knowledge. So this is verse 15, where the face of truth is hidden by a shining disk. O Sun, the sustainer of life and everything in this world, please remove the disk so that I, a seeker of truth, may see it. So as we look out at the world, it can seem to be very beautiful. But its beauty is largely dependent upon the state of our consciousness. That for a gloomy person, or Swami Varadananda said, for the evil person, this very world is hell. This very world is a terrible place, full of darkness, full of other evil people and things, because that's his state of consciousness. For many people, the world becomes kind of a boring, humdrum place. On the other hand, as we begin to progress spiritually, this world also will begin to progress spiritually. Our vision, our experience of life and of the world will start to get better. And this is kind of a problem all along the spiritual path, is that the further you go, the better things look, and the happier you become, and the more kind of joyful your experience like this, and there's always the danger of stopping and saying, well, this is good enough. A person who's leading a bad life or having a lot of difficulties, a lot of problems, he's very happy to get out of those problems. He realizes there's something wrong here, I've got to be better than this, and so he easily can kind of give up that nature. But it's much more difficult for a good person to seek something higher than just being a good human being. Because a good person is beginning to have a happy life. He's beginning to have a good life. He looks at himself, he looks at life and suggests that things are good. And so he tends to become content with that. And this is a difficulty, is that you make a little bit of progress, and you start to feel calm, you start to feel at peace, everything starts seeming better, seeming much more pleasant than it was before, and you say, well, this is okay, and you kind of stay there. So like, all along the way, you're on this journey, this spiritual journey to the ultimate truth. All along the way, you're seeing scenery. And as you go, the closer you go, the better the scenery gets. But at any point where you get fascinated by the scenery, and you stop and say, oh, let's have a picnic here, then that's where your journey kind of ends, and you don't go any further. So this whole universe, the whole kind of manifest universe, has the capacity, depending on our state of consciousness, to be in total darkness, total gloom, total misery, or it can become truly glorious in its experience. And but the ultimate goal, and the goal of the spiritual is to attain union with God, to attain the actual knowledge of our true being, which is as the one self of all, as the one universal consciousness, which has created all this glory. And so this verse is praying to the sun, that you're shining, I see your glory, but behind you, I know there's something more. And so it's praying to that sun to kind of remove that glory so that I can see the truth. And it doesn't mean necessarily that everything is negative, but, and this is what this verse, what this Upanishad kind of focuses on, is the idea that underlying all the things we experience, the people and everything else, underlying that there's one reality. And the more we think in those terms, of not just the appearance of things and events as they seem to happen, but in terms of the underlying reality of things and the underlying reality of ourselves, then the more we'll see the divinity in things. And so this is kind of the ultimate journey, is to realize the truth, to know what the truth is, to know what the goal is in spiritual life, and then to say, okay, this is the destination, this is where I have to go, and just always kind of keep moving in that direction. That doesn't mean that you have to hate or reject things as they come along, but always realize like where it's coming from. And see, the only thing actually we have to kind of get beyond is our ego, our sense of I am this particular individual and I'm enjoying this and I'm enjoying that and I'm enjoying that. As we begin to lessen the strength of that ego, then things can start to unfold in the right way. And then we'll begin to see more and more, see even in our daily life, even in our daily experience, we'll begin to see more and more of the divinity of things. And then eventually reach a point where there's no conflict between God and the universe, because they're all one thing. And but it all depends on what the state of our consciousness is. And this is the spiritual journey is essentially a transformation of consciousness, of moving from a very limited, very dark, ignorant state of consciousness, moving more into the light, so that the underlying divinity within yourself begins to unfold. As it unfolds within you, as you become aware of it, then you also become aware of it in all your experiences. So for the spiritual person, every place he's at is a temple of God. Every place is sacred. Every act is worship. Every act is something sacred. And it's a matter of our consciousness. It's the same thing we're doing now becomes something very spiritual when we do it with the right type of consciousness. We mentioned this in regard to karma yoga. How two people sitting side by side in an office, sitting at this doing exactly the same job, for one person, it's just a job. He does the job, he gets paid, and that's it. Now the second person, if he's doing it in a spirit of karma yoga, or a spirit of worship, a spirit of detachment, service, then not only is he doing the job, not only is he getting paid, but he's also growing spiritually. And he's also finding kind of happiness and joy in the work. A person can go do the work, get paid, get all, and be totally miserable with the work, with the job. It's a drudgery. It's something that you're forced to do, and so you do it, and you bring home your paycheck, and that's it. But that same work, whatever it is, begins to become something joyful when you begin to do it with an attitude, with the right attitude, of love or of worship. And this is many of the saints have become saints just by whatever they do, they offer it to God. They mentally offer it to God, and gradually this is producing a deeper state of consciousness. I mentioned in the past how once when I was in Houston, I was giving a talk on karma yoga, and afterwards this man came up to me, and he was a professor in college. And he mentioned that he used to hate teaching. He said he couldn't stand it, he couldn't stand the students, he just hated the whole thing. But then he read the Gita, he read about karma yoga and all, and so he started trying to do it in that spirit. And he said now, when he'd get ready to go into the classroom, he would feel like he was entering into a temple. And he said now he was, whereas before he didn't like the students at all, now he was making a real connection with them. That not only were they learning, but they were coming to him with like their personal problems and things. So but he was filled with a sense of joy and a sense of the sacred. And he was all, not because he was doing anything different as regards to work, but simply he changed his attitude towards it. And so this is what we're trying to do, is to change our attitude and enjoy as things unfold. The mystics have described it as going from glory to glory. That the more you move towards the union with God, towards the presence of God, the more the glory of the universe comes, so that the very ordinary, mundane thing can become transformed into something truly wonderful and beautiful if you allow it to. And this is, I've used the example how, for example, there's a rock by the side, by the sidewalk. Every day, how many people walk by their rock, and it's just a rock. Now, one day, an artist is walking by, and he sees that rock, and he said, that's so beautiful. There's all different veins and colors and things in it. That's such a beautiful rock. Now, the artist saw the beauty in that rock, which nobody else did, because he had the eyes to see it. But the beauty was always there. And so the presence of God is always there wherever we are, but we don't have the eyes to see it. But as you develop the eyes, then it begins to reveal itself in every aspect of life, begins to become something sacred, something truly wonderful, and your heart will become full of joy, full of happiness. We've mentioned many times that you can go through life, you can accomplish all the goals you wanted. You can get all the money you want, all the fame, all the position and everything else. You can attain all those things and still be completely miserable. But when you begin to find the true source of happiness that's there within your own inner nature, then not only do you become happy, but all your experiences become happy. And so everything gradually changes and becomes transformed. And this gets kind of better and better and better as you go along. But the Upanishad points out, but at the same time, as things are getting better and better and you're getting happier and happier, at the same time you should keep in mind what the real goal is, what the ultimate destination is. Because otherwise you get distracted. Like say you get a couple of plateaus up, and they say, oh, this is good. And that's where you'll stay. And for most people, once they've attained a bit of goodness. Once they become good human beings, and they find themselves having a happy, decent, pleasant life, usually they're quite content with it. It's often, sometimes, the people who are alcoholics or drug addicts or deeper down, they have the capacity to make the shift to something beyond just human level, because they're kind of desperate, you know. And so they say it's much harder for a person to give up his goodness than he is to give up his badness. And if we think that because we're a good person, because we're decent, you know, honest, and truthful, that therefore we are spiritual, that's not true. We're good human beings. Spiritual is spirit. It's something different altogether, and it takes a whole moving into a whole level of consciousness. And ultimately, the ultimate goal is to become one with that consciousness, which is the consciousness, which is the consciousness within everybody, out of which the whole universe has come. That is the real self. When they talk about self with a capital S, that's what they mean. But it's not your personal self. It's not something that you personally have. It's something that's the self of everybody. And the only way to reach it ultimately is by letting go of the small personal self that we cling to, through which we try to enjoy things, and to be open to this universal kind of presence within. And so this is why the verse is saying, you know, that this world appears so beautiful. And it does, but that beauty gets better and better the further we go. But beyond all the manifestation that we experience, beyond the universe that we experience, is the underlying source out of which it's all come. And even though that always sounds Brahman, it sounds sort of metaphysical and abstract, it's actually, it's much higher than any kind of, you know, heaven or thing we could think of. It is actually the source of everything. And so, and this is what kind of the spiritual journey is moving towards that. In each life, we kind of move towards it. Yeah, and so, for some people, this whole universe actually is like a big playground. And we're actually all children of immortal bliss. We're all God's children, and for many people coming into this world, it's just like a playground. They go to enjoy things, to experience different things. But like as a child gets older, then it begins to take a more kind of responsible view. It wants to have a purpose to its life. So then it begins to view life and more as a chance to develop strength and courage and kind of spiritual qualities and so forth. But eventually then the question could go, who am I really? Where did I come from? Why am I here? And all these things come, and then the answer to all those big questions is something that has to kind of unfold from within. And this is where then the person is moving. He's no longer satisfied with just a human life, even a very pleasant, comfortable human life is no longer satisfactory. It's Swami Varadananda. He got a master's in Sanskrit from Nagpur University, and he said once, his teacher, the head of the Sanskrit department, he invited him to his home for dinner. And he was head of the Sanskrit department in a big, huge house, full of servants, full of everything. But the teacher, told him, I have this big house, I have all these servants, and my wife is dancing for joy. But me, I feel like I swallowed a red-hot ball. It's just, even in this wonderful kind of human situation, I am just totally miserable. And this is where a person is really ready for kind of seeking something higher than just a good human life, to begin to see that ultimate spiritual truth. And so all along the way, there's the danger that at some point you get distracted by the beauty that you see or the powers or the different things that come, and then you kind of forget where your headed to, and you kind of go off the track. You know, we mentioned back when we were studying Raja Yoga, the Yoga aphorisms, meditation, at some point the yogi reaches kind of a fork in the road. That as he goes on developing, as he goes on, you know, and kind of increasing his mental power, his experience, everything else, that life is getting better. And whereas before, most people, they just don't have the energy or the strength to feel, oh, I can go out and really do something big in the world, you know, make a lot of money or get a lot of followers or things like that. But as a person gets his kind of energy and things back, suddenly so many things that just really seemed out of the question before suddenly become a possibility. And whereas before, you know, he could never attract money or fame or things like that, now suddenly, oh, I can do that. I can get 14 Rolls Royces, or I can get this or that. And so there comes a fork in the road where the yogi has to choose whether he's on the path for his own kind of self-enhancement, his self-advancement, his own purpose, or whether it's for self-abnegation. And we said that the essential basis of all true spiritual life is not my will, but thy will be done. As long as you're doing whatever you're doing, you may be practicing yoga, you may be doing tapas, austerities, all kinds of things, but as long as you're doing what you're doing for yourself, it's not spiritual. It's like in mythology. You have all these demons that did great austerities. You know, they did tremendous austerities, and because of that, they get these superpowers, and then they go out and wreak havoc on the world. So, like that, no matter what you're doing, even if it's very good things you're doing, if you're doing it basically for yourself, then it's not spiritual. But if you're doing anything, even housework, anything else, a simple little job, but you're doing it for the sake of God or for something higher than your personal self, then it becomes spiritual. And this sense of a surrender, of not my will but thy will be done, is a great protection on your path. Because otherwise it keeps you, it keeps things in perspective. It keeps you kind of headed in the right direction. Otherwise, at any moment, some little higher thing comes and you get distracted and drawn into it, and then you kind of forget the journey. So, the more a person advances, it's like the more possibilities are there. But as the attitude of thy will be done, of the attitude of surrender, like Sri Ramakrishna said that there were two kinds of egos, the unripe ego and the ripe ego. The unripe ego thinks, oh, I've got so much education, I have so much money, I'm so beautiful, and this or that. On the other hand, the ripe ego says, I'm just the instrument, God is the doer, I'm the servant, He's the master, I'm the child, He's the mother. Like that, when as we begin to operate from the ripe ego, then we're getting ourselves attuned to that higher spiritual consciousness, which is higher than the personal self, and which can only be kind of realized by getting beyond the personal self. You're making a connection. And it's gradually that connection, that core of kind of unselfishness behind your endeavors, that then kind of protects you. You know, Sri Ramakrishna said in India, they had a game, I think it must be quite cheesy. we have what we call sari or something like that, but again, the idea of the game is you take your piece, you get it all the way, you have like 4 pieces. You take your piece, you get it all the way around to the end, and then you get it into the home base. And then when all your pieces are there, then you win the game. But at any time during the game, if his piece lands on your square, then your piece gets sent all the way back to the beginning. He said, however, if you have 2 of your pieces together on the same square, then nobody can send you back. And Sri Ramakrishna says it's like this when a person has true devotion to God. That is, it's no longer just him ready to fall at any moment, to get distracted, but now it's him and God, and then nothing can send him back. So, in order to kind of really make progress in the journey, it's necessary to have this sense of I'm doing it not just to get peace of mind or low blood pressure or to get powers or to get to heaven. We mentioned about the yajnas that they talk about, and you notice how usually behind all these there was a motive. They were done for some purpose, to bring health, to take a person to heaven, to bring long life, prosperity, whatever, but they were done kind of to bring about a specific purpose. But when worship is done with an attitude of just offering ourselves to God, or just offering things to God, for God's sake, then it becomes spiritual. And then it begins to lead the person kind of deeper and deeper until a person begins to have the actual experience of God. It doesn't all come usually all at once, but you begin to sense, yes, there's something there. That as the mind gets quiet, and as all your disturbance and things you begin to sense there's something, higher presence here. And then you begin to get drawn more and more towards that higher presence. But at any point, if the ego takes over and says, oh, now I become so spiritual, now I can go out and do things and teach and help, heal people and all kind of that, then at that point you've lost it, and eventually you'll hit a yogi, you'll hit a certain level, and for some time he may be kind of at that level, but eventually he tends to go back down. So this was the verse then, that the face of truth is hidden by a shining disk. O Son, the sustainer of life and everything in this world, please remove the disk so that I, a seeker of truth, may see it. Now, behind the whole universe, behind everything we experience, like I said, it becomes more and more wonderful, more and more glorious the further we go. But underlying that is the truth. And this is the anmala, is to know not just the kind of the glories of this world or the next, but to know what the actual underlying reality is. Because that underlying reality is what we actually are. And that underlying reality is nothing more than Brahman itself. And when you get that, you get the whole thing. You get everything. You might go to heaven, you might become a deva, a god, something else, but that's still a temporary thing. You'll be there for some time, then you come back to earth or whatever. But when you attain the knowledge, the experience of this ultimate reality, what you discover is that the consciousness, which is you, the consciousness which is saying, I am, I exist, that consciousness is actually Brahman's consciousness. And it's, we mentioned many times before talking in terms of Jnana Yoga, how right now that consciousness is connected with a particular body, a particular mind, and a particular subtle body, and is going through many lives, perhaps leading an individual existence, an individual soul, going through different realms. But the consciousness, in its own state, in its true nature, the thing which says, this is me, that consciousness is actually just the pure consciousness, is just the Brahman. Now, as a human being, as an individual identified with the body, mind, so on, we can think of ourselves as good, or we can think of ourselves as bad. And as very kind of happy or very unhappy, but as consciousness, as our real self, we're the Brahman itself, the source of everything, because there's nothing that is not Brahman. And there's nowhere for Brahman to go. Everything is contained within Brahman. And so everything that we see, experience, is a manifestation of Brahman. In our individuality, as individuals, we don't see everything as a manifestation of Brahman. We don't see everything as an expression of one consciousness. We see everything as different. And we interact with each other. But one of the basic things that happens as a person becomes spiritual is that he becomes aware that within each and every individual, there's the one same consciousness there. And eventually can reach a point where he's not associated, doesn't think of himself. I'm not male or female, I'm not American, I'm not Indian, I'm not anything, I'm Brahman, I'm Atman. And this is then taking a stand back on what he really is. And in that, everything else is contained. Everything. The person, Sri Krishna, you say that, a person who has attained freedom, who has attained the realization of his real nature, he said he's no longer bound by any kind of laws of morality, ethics, or anything else. But he said, but an expert dancer never takes a false step. Right now we have sense that we've been taught, this is right, this is wrong, and most people are trying to follow, lead a good life, and do the best we can. But when a person is united with God, then he's no longer thinking in those terms of being a good person or a bad person. Sri Krishna, he used to pray to Divine Mother, here's your goodness, here's your badness, I give them both to you, just give me love for you. And like that, a person is no longer thinking in those terms, but he won't ever do anything that's bad or harmful or immoral because it's just not his nature anymore. The spiritual nature is beginning to express itself. So the closer we approach that truth, the more we'll see kind of the glory of that reality. And he said everything keeps getting better and better and better, but ultimately, and this is good. I mean, this is things have to unfold in their own way. It's like you can't kind of force things to happen. It's like a plant that grows. So you have to keep nurturing it, but then it sometimes will take its own time, and you'll see things unfold. But ultimately, keeping in mind that the goal is to attain this highest realization of your oneness with Brahman. So then the next verse, let's echo what was there. Pusane kashe yamasuya prajapatya vyuha rasmin samoha teja yate rupam kalya nattamam tate pashyami yo savasava pursaha so hamasmi. So, O Darshan, solitary traveler and guide, O son of Prajapati, please gather your rays, withdraw your light. I want to see your most beautiful form. There is that Purusha within you. I am that Purusha. So the son is the nourisher of all. He is a solitary traveler. That is, he is self-sufficient. He is also called Yama because he controls everything. Prajapati, he is the Lord of all beings, and the sun is his child. The sun's rays are scattered all over the world. This verse requests him to gather his rays in a little. You are too bright for my eyes. So please dim your light for my sake. You can be most beautiful and gracious. I want to see you so. It is not that I am begging. I know that I do not have to, for there is someone presiding over your domain, and I feel I am he. The sun is the symbol of Brahman. At first you worship the sun as a deity. You are tremendously impressed by his power and beauty. You begin by asking for a fraction of all he has. Later, however, you discover that you and he are one and the same. This revelation takes place after years of self-restraint, renunciation, and meditation. So we're almost at the end. There's 2 more verses. Other than that, though, we've gone through most of the Isha Upanishad. So this verse kind of echoes or continues the thought that we had before, which is that behind the sun, behind the universe, all of its glories, everything else, behind it there's something. And that's something that is actually what we are. As we get absorbed in the pictures, in the kind of experiences and things that come, then we tend to forget, lose touch with who we really are, and then we go through our life through good or bad. But all the time, we are that one Brahman, that one infinite consciousness, which is expressing itself through this particular individual. And this is normally, and this is what we were supposed to be doing in this world, is actually expressing God. We're like an outlet through which God can manifest, part of its nature here. But normally, we tend to block that manifestation. And this is where we mentioned when we talked, I read that chapter on Tree of Life some time ago, how the one power, the one prana is there, trying to flow through us. And they use the example of the Tree of Life, that you have the one tree, the one life force is there. Everybody, every individual, we're all branches on that one tree. And when we're connected to that tree, then the sound and the life force and everything of the tree is feeding the branch, and it sustains the branch. But if you take the branch and you cut it off from the tree, then it no longer has that kind of life force, that connection with that life force. And the point is, so it will begin to wither or dry up. Now, as a manifestation, as a branch of the tree, expressing a little bit of the glory of God, we have kind of wonderful things. And so that a tree, a branch, I think, oh, I'm such a glorious thing. I'm so wonderful. I have such beautiful flowers. I have such luscious fruit, everything. But then you cut that branch off from the tree, and I'm pretty sure all the fruits, all the flowers, everything, they start to wither and die up, and there's nothing left to be kind of glorious about, to be proud of. And so we come into light, and we have this energy and this things within us in the sense that, oh, I can do wonderful things. But then we disconnect from our source, and then we find we wither down. We start off full of energy and enthusiasm, and gradually we get kind of worn out and we get old. But as long as you're connected to the tree, you won't get old, because old spirit doesn't get old. It's only the body. So as an ego, as an individual, what we've done is we've cut ourselves off from the tree, and then we see everything in terms of totus, I and you, and he and she, and like that, and we interact with the world from this standpoint. And we interact as something that says, put a barrier between ourselves and God. And this is where the problems come, is that through thinking, we're able to block out the presence of God. Just like the sun is shining, but if we want, we can pull down the shades and live in darkness and gloom. So we create this barrier that I'm this person, and I'm not one with the universe, I'm not one with Brahman or anything else. And so, with this sense of separation, we're in the world, we're acting in the world, and we're doing some good things, and we may be doing some bad things. We may be successful, or we may be a failure. But everything on a very small scale. Now, when the branch soul is connected with the tree again, which is what is meant by oneness, is then what's flowing through you is the infinite power of God, the infinite wisdom of God, the infinite love of God. That's beginning to flow through you. and there's no limit, literally, to what can be accomplished. Right now, the world and the situation the world is in is just the result of the state of consciousness of the 6 billion people or so that are in the world. In other words, the sum total of everybody's state of consciousness is producing the world that we see. Now, if 1 or 10 or 100 people can attain their knowledge that God resides within me and resides within everybody else, it has the capacity to uplift the whole world. Swami Vivekananda said, that the incarnations or the God-men that we hear about are only a very small number. He said, always, there have been other God-men who you never hear about. They live in a cave or something somewhere. You're not even aware that they ever existed. But he said, because always there have been these great souls in the world, because of that, the consciousness of mankind has been uplifted. He said, if not for these great souls, mankind would have descended to the level of the animals. In other words, our consciousness would have become completely material without any idea of anything higher than just physical existence. But anyone who attains even a little bit of this higher consciousness becomes like a light in the world that uplifts everybody. Not because he's trying to do good or save the world, that's one of the obstacles that come, but because it's just, as you get light, light will begin to shine, and that helps everybody you come in contact with. Not by preaching to them or anything else, but just by your very presence. So sometimes we may have had experience. Some people, when you're with them, it just kind of uplifts you. Other people, you get the opposite. You just feel really kind of drugged down. So the state of our consciousness, of each individual, is actually kind of broadcasting all the time, and it affects the people around us for good or bad. Now, most of us, we're not aware of it, and other people, they're not aware of it either. But on a subtle level, it has an effect, and so anybody who's moving towards the light is beginning to become a kind of a light himself within the world. And one who's totally realized God, who's totally become one with God, is now God can fully function. Like in the case of Sri Krishna. Now he attained nirvikalpa samadhi, he was completely immersed in God, and then Divine Mother's told you to remain in Bhagavan. Remain in a state where you're connected with God, but at the same time you're aware of the outside world, and so then that's all his teaching and spiritual power and everything else came out of that. So each individual has the capacity to become a great kind of transforming influence in the world, as long as you don't try to be. As long as you're saying, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to save the world, then you're in trouble. But if you move towards God and just say, let God's will manifest as it will, then eventually you begin to become a kind of a spiritual blessing. And this, the person who's moved towards God, who's attained some degree of connection with God, it becomes a blessing to the world. Ordinary people, we're not. We may be good people, we may be unselfish, we may do service and things like that, but the true blessing comes when God's light is able to kind of go through the individual. So anyway, so we only got 2 verses to go, just kind of 2 kind of summary verses. So we'll finish those next week, and then I think we'll go on to the Isha Upanishad. So any questions? Okay, then I want to thank you all for coming. So this, as you know, tonight we've got our retreat going on with Swami Varadananda up in Ganges on Isha Upanishad. And Swami Isha Upanishad is up there now, and then he'll come back tomorrow because Swami Varadananda, who is head of the center in Berkeley, he's coming in tomorrow afternoon. And on Sunday, this Sunday, he will give a talk on understanding Swami Vivekananda. And we have our yoga classes. On Saturday, Sunday, we have Sanskrit class on Saturday, all those things going on. Om Asatoma Satyamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Vichurmam Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. O Lord, lead us from the unreal to the real, lead us from darkness to light, and lead us from death to immortality. Oh, peace, peace,